All right. Well, welcome. Nice to meet you, John. John Kagia from you're the Chief Growth Officer at New Frontier Data. Am I correct?
The Chief Knowledge Officer, that's right.
Sorry, Chief Knowledge Officer at New Frontier Data. Well, why don't you tell me what does that title mean? What does that mean, and what do you do?
Well, I'm a market research analyst and management consultant by training. So I spent my career prior to cannabis working generally with very large high performance organizations at the C-suite, helping decision makers use research, business intelligence, market insights to make better informed decisions around how to grow, compete, measure performance, and capitalize on new opportunities more effectively. So kind of bringing in that background, when we joined New Frontier at the founding of the company, my mandate was to build a research team that would provide new insights, market intelligence, and guidance to the stakeholders who are trying to build this new legal industry. And so for the past 6 years, I've had the privilege of leading New Frontier's research team.
Okay, and this research team, what type of mindset of a person do you look for? I mean, are people it's I'm just trying to think of what type of person does that to research. What are the specific requirements for this type of role?
So we've been really fortunate in that we've been able to build a really kind of broad base of skills in each of our analysts. But one thing that is kind of defining across all of them is just a really high degree of intellectual curiosity, one. And then two, the ability to see connections between dots that most people might miss. So it's the ability to have 3, 4, 5 different points of data and be able to find a story in them. That I think actually sets our research team apart from a lot of other folks in the space. They're very, very smart, obviously. Most of our team come in with kind of research backgrounds, whether that's in data science or consumer research or financial markets. But all of them, to a man and woman, are fascinated and passionate about the growth of this cannabis industry.
So what happens if someone is collecting these data points and is creating the story, the arc, the story, but they get it wrong? What happens then?
Any researcher who says that they've never gotten it wrong has not been in the game very long, because it happens to all of us. Part of it is just taking ownership. If you get it wrong, then be willing to admit to your clients, to the market, that this needs to be updated, this needs to be corrected. 2 is instituting a very robust double loop learning process. So how do you prevent this from happening again after it's happened once? And then 3 is recognizing that there's no way to cut corners in this kind of work. If you're going to do it right, then take the time to do it right. And it can be frustratingly slow sometimes. It can make your clients crazy that you need 2 weeks rather than 1. But you can't rush baking a cake. And in the work like we do, which is as much science as art, it's absolutely worth taking the time to do it right, because some of these mistakes, particularly in a market that is moving as quickly as cannabis, you do it once and get it right.
Fair enough. And so what do you see? There have been interesting shifts in the market. I see that there are a number of companies that had an interest, invested interest in Jamaica, and they kind of pulled out, and not because of anything really to do with Jamaica. I don't think you can tell. We could talk about that in a bit. But they kind of shifted towards more the local markets and a lot of them CBD and so on. How do you see those trends, or those trends shifting with the CBD markets, with the US opening up, but with also the original plan, which was a pretty wide recreational landscape? But there's that level of shift. Do you see that? What do you guys see? I don't know.
Yeah, so there's a number of interesting global trends that are all happening simultaneously.
Okay.
One, and maybe we can start with CBD, which is that particularly with the United Nations declaration last December saying ostensibly, cannabis should be rescheduled to remove it from the list of the world's most dangerous drugs,
Right.
I think has been a really important kind of green light for countries that were wondering whether this is something that they should consider, to take it a little more seriously. I'm sitting in Kenya in Africa right now, and we certainly have seen over the past 8 months, 8 to 12 months, a very significant shift in the level of conversation that is happening around the liberalization of cannabis policy. And CBD is particularly hemp-derived CBD is a low-hanging way to get there.
Right.
On the THC side, we see a lot more interest in legalizing, but for medical use only. There are not many countries in the world outside of North America and maybe 1 or 2 in Europe that are having a real robust conversation about going fully recreational. I think we will see North America be the first place where you have a large landmass, hundreds of millions of people who have access to recreational cannabis. But I think it's going to be much slower to get to full recreational access in the rest of the world. Though in the markets that go medical, and I think Jamaica is a good example of this, if you structure your medical laws in a way that allows broad public access, then even without a recreational program, you can still stimulate a fairly robust cannabis economy just through a medical structure.
Which is quite a bit of what is actually really happening. Of course, there are a lot of people who want access to the market, and that's not always tenable for everybody that's in the market, just like that. So it's an issue that we are dealing with. I will get to that, but you see, you're in Kenya. I've lived very close. I lived in Tanzania, and I pretty much know what. I'm sure the sentiment is similar to here. There's a lot of indoctrination that came with the Europeans and whatever. It's frowned. Its use is frowned upon. I'm Bangi and so on and so forth. I remember that well. So how are things changing? How do you see things changing in that part of the world? Obviously, one would assume Africa, the continent, could capitalize significantly on the cannabis industry. What kind of changes are you seeing?
Yes, so that's actually been one of the things that has really surprised me in the 6 years I have been coming back to the continent since I came into the industry. When I arrived in Kenya first in late 2015 and told people I was working in the cannabis industry, they would literally grab their kids and be like, "Get away from that guy! He's a bangy man."
Exactly, bangy.
A lot of people is quiet about just being in the same room. And you fast forward to today, and the level of awareness about what is happening on a global basis has been extraordinary. My parents and their peers have historically been the most conservative, most anti-cannabis people in this society, and even now, talking to them, you see this radical sea change, particularly as they and their friends start getting older, are experiencing diseases that can be helped by cannabis. Some friends have been using cannabis and seeing phenomenal benefit. It's awesome. One thing if you're reading a story in Newsweek or the Washington Post, but it's a very different thing if your friend of 70 years is telling you that cannabis has kept them alive or helped alleviate the worst of the condition or the worst of the symptoms from their cancer. And that is that kind of word of mouth experience. It was one thing when it was happening in the West. And you could discount the crazy Americans,
crazy white people,
ideas. But when it's people you've known your entire life, it changes the conversation. So we're seeing an accelerating shift, particularly amongst people of influence in this conversation. And while Kenya is moving slowly, literally just 2 days ago, Rwanda became the latest country on the continent to legalize medical cannabis cultivation. They are targeting the export market, but the fact that the Rwandans have done it is going to stimulate a much more robust conversation, not just in Eastern Africa, but across the continent.
It's moving further north than pretty much, because one would imagine South Africa would have taken an active role from day one. But I am happy to see it spreading across. That is a good thing. And what kind of market trends have you seen within the Caribbean? I was just in fact reading. I think the UN just released their latest drugs report just a couple days ago, and the figures were from 2015, unfortunately. But Jamaica was not even the highest consumers within the Caribbean. But since legalization, and that was 2015. So since then, I'm sure there's been a marked shift in the consumption of cannabis. And what kind of trends have you seen since you've been tracking any data in Jamaica, if any at all?
So interestingly, we were beginning to build our kind of estimates for the opportunity in Jamaica. And one of the things that I think sets Jamaica apart from the rest of the Caribbean is the role that tourism, that Canna tourism specifically, we think will play in Jamaica's economy relative to some of the smaller neighboring islands. So just a bit of context on why we think this is so, the idea of Canna tourism in Jamaica is so compelling. One is, Jamaica in 2018 saw around 4.5 million tourists visit the island. However, when we think about the global market for cannabis, there are nearly 300 million people in the world who consume cannabis regularly. So as Jamaica becomes one of the first markets that has a market structure that allows non-residents from around the world to come in and very easily participate in their medical program, it creates an opportunity to build a canna tourism economy that will look unlike any other medical market in the Caribbean, or at least to date in the world. So with COVID disrupting the emergence of, or with COVID coinciding with the emergence of Jamaica's market, we haven't yet had a chance to really test how much of a tourism economy based on cannabis Jamaica will be able to afford. But I certainly think that as we start getting out of the pandemic, as people really start traveling again, the fact that Jamaica is going to be up and running will make it a very, very attractive destination for canna tourists. And we know from our research that 22% of cannabis consumers say that they would be positively influenced to visit a destination if cannabis is legal there. So a destination like Jamaica, relative to some of the other islands where the consumers would not have access to cannabis, become very attractive. And the fact that you have already a couple of places in Jamaica that have set up canna tourism offerings. I'm thinking here, for example, of Coral Cove or of Hedonism, which is part of the first two are going to be quite a lot of resorts and other hospitality offerings that integrate cannabis and thereby form a broader portfolio of cannabis-based offerings for the tourism market.
So what bit of advice would you give to, say, somebody who was thinking, I want to get into the ganja game, maybe not even plan to, what in Jamaica, what advice, say from an external investment point of view and say in a local entrepreneurial point of view?
Great question. And it's one that we've actually had conversations around with people in Jamaica. We're having similar conversations with people in Latin America and in Africa. So first is, if you're interested in getting into the cannabis game, it does not have to be plant touching. You do not need to be like the only, growing cannabis is not the only way to participate in this market. Because this is such a young and emerging industry, it needs everything. It needs lawyers who understand the laws and regulations and can guide clients through it. It needs people who are experienced accountants and can understand how to navigate the unique kind of taxation structures of cannabis as a regulated product. It needs folks who understand import-export rules and regulations. And if you're thinking about exporting product from Jamaica, say, into Europe, people who understand how to navigate the rules around good agricultural and collective practices or good manufacturing practices. It needs good marketers. You are seeing this shift of branding moving away from having pot leaves and to having kind of product aesthetic that you would expect to find in an Apple store.
Right. Yeah.
There's such, it needs research. It needs business research. It needs medical research. It needs kind of chemical research. There's so much opportunity beyond growing and manufacturing products that the first piece of advice we would say is think expansively about how you can apply the skills you've developed in other parts of the economy to an industry that needs all of it.
I was going to say there will be some people who will say, in fact, well, we've already got the distribution thing down because we've been doing it for years, but it's like, well, not that kind of distribution. But sorry, anyway, go on, carry on, please go ahead.
And to that point around, there's going to be people who say you could do this in the gray or unregulated market, so we're just going to port this over. It doesn't work like that. You know, this is a real industry. We're building the foundation of a real global cannabis economy. And so absolutely critical that you do your homework. One of the things we say a lot is plan for where the market is going, not where it currently is. So one example is just on the price of cannabis. In North America, when most legal markets start out, you could get between, say, $3,000 and $5,000 per pound of cannabis. Within 2 or 3 years of the market being legal, those numbers have dropped to $1,500 a pound. In some markets, down to $1,000 a pound.
Right, okay.
So if you thought you were going to be making $3,000 a pound for the next 10 years, then, you know, when the price hits $1,000 a pound, you're in deep trouble.
Your projections are a bit off.
So plan for where the market is going, not where it currently is. Prices are going to fall. Yeah. Prices are going to fall. The market is going to become very competitive. The branding is going to become more sophisticated. The consumer preferences are going to change. You know, when most markets launch, consumers smoke, and smoking is the primary way in which is consumed. But when you look at what's happening in North America right now, half of the market is flower, the other half is value-added products. It's vapes, it's edibles, it's topicals, it's lotions. And so understand that this is a really dynamic market, and one of the things you have to build into your business strategy is agility. Be able to identify new opportunities as they emerge and be able to very quickly capitalize on them.
This Equios platform, how is what is that, and how is that going to now revolutionize how we approach the industry from, I guess, an investor point of view and from a businessman's point of view, you know, I guess.
One of the reasons why we formed New Frontier as a company nearly 7 years ago now was the recognition that this was going to be a phenomenally high growth market, but the type of information that you would use to make strategic decisions, particularly strategic investment and operational decisions in every other market in the world, you didn't have in cannabis. The type of data that an investor would need, the type of data that a business owner would need was just not available in this market. And so for the past, nearly 7 years, what we've been doing is collecting a phenomenally broad and deep base of both data and market intelligence to enable more agile and more insightful decision-making. And in our platform, Equio, we have taken everything that we have learned over the past 7 years and put it into a highly interactive, easy to navigate, and phenomenally rich database that allows anyone to go in and look for the information that is aligned with their interests and drill really deep into that part of the market. Okay. So for the people who are coming into this industry now, we've made their work much easier than it was for us when we started doing this all those years ago.
Right on. Excellent. That sounds great. Well, let's see what data we collect on Jamaica and the Caribbean, because I do see the Caribbean being an interesting market as well. You are correct. They won't have the tourism. Barbados a little bit, maybe the tourism offering and so on, but it's gonna. But then there's also the local market and see what we can develop the locals, because they're everybody is curious. They want to participate, whether it's as a consumer or or an entrepreneur or investor. They want to participate in some way, shape, or form. Thank you for your time, John. Sorry. Yeah, it was a pleasure meeting with you. Thank you for sitting with us. It was a great meeting, and I'm sure we'll speak again. And we will be having a conference in January 2022 that will be live and in person in the Grill, Jamaica. You are most certainly invited as a participating guest. I'll get that information to you as time draws closer.
Thank you very much, Amari. It's been a pleasure, and I certainly hope we'll have more opportunities to speak, because we are very bullish on the opportunity in Jamaica, and not just for the tourism as a straight opportunity, but also because of the deep cultural history of cannabis in Jamaica, and that allows Jamaica to position itself in a way that literally very few other places on the planet can, that I think is going to be an additional point of very strong appeal for Canada tourists as they start to travel again.
Right on. Well, as soon as when they open up the doors, people are are dying for that to happen. I assure you. All right, thank you once again. You have a great day, and yeah, just keep doing what you guys do. It's phenomenal stuff. I'll be jumping on some of those data points and writing about it as well, because it is. I'm kind of a data nerd myself, so yeah, and information is always interesting. Thanks again. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, bye-bye. So.